Today is Wednesday. It is the 22nd day of Sivan, which is also the second day of June. June 2nd. Isn't that day that the 6-Day War ended? It was the end of the 6-Day War, I think. So, a great day for the Jewish people, and may we all experience miracles speedily in our days. Today we're learning Talmud about the world to come. The Talmud about the world to come. Many, many Jews are unaware, I would say ignorant, of the fact that we not only believe in the world to come, of course we believe in the world to come, this eternity of the soul. If you believe only in your body, then there is no world to come because your body dies, gets buried, and that's it. But if you believe in not only the body, but also the soul being a piece of God, an eternal, immortal, indestructible, indefatigable piece of God, then just like God is forever eternal and immortal, so too is your soul. Is forever immortal and eternal. Where does it go after you die? Well, that's what we're going to learn about in the Talmud here today on page 232. If you have the black version of the Ein Yaakov, if you don't have the book, just follow along. But we are on that page 222 as we learn now about the world to come. Okay, let's do this. Rav was accustomed to say the world to come is not like this world. In the world to come, there is no eating or drinking, no procreating, no business dealings, no jealousy, no hatred, no competition. Sounds boring, right? Like, what are you supposed to do over there if we're not fighting? like what's supposed to happen? Rather, the righteous sit with their crowns on their heads and delight in the radiance of the Shekhinah. As it says about the Jews of Mount Sinai, and they gazed at God, and they ate, and they drank. Interesting, right? The rabbis taught in the Brisa the assurance that God gave righteous women in regard to receiving reward in the world to come is greater than the assurance that God gave to the righteous men. For it says in Isaiah, O tranquil woman, rise up and hear my voice. O confident daughters, give ear to my speech. Righteous women are referred to as tranquil and confident because their share in the world to come is assured, whereas righteous men have no such guarantee. Rav said, for what do women merit this great assurance? Why are women more deserving of the world to come? And we're going to talk about the world to come in a moment, but why are the women more of merit of the world to come than the men? Any ideas here before we go further? I can't see who's with us. I only know the Marty's with me in live, but I don't know who's with us. I know for some reason it's not populating for me who's here. Maybe if you're there, if you could comment or say something, so I'll know that you're with us. Let me check something else. The wacky world of social media. I see Winston actually is with us, but I cannot see who's with us on Facebook. So let us know if you're there. So why would the woman have greater assurance of the world to come rather than men? It's interesting. The women don't need to have a bris. Think about that. They don't need to wear a yarmulke either because they're more sensitized to spirituality than the men are. I see Winston says Facebook is live. Good. Thank you. I know there are people with us. I just don't know who they are. There you are. Howard and Susan's with us. Thank you. So at least I know that the comments box is working. So why then are the women more meritorious than the men? Hi, Stephanie. Good morning. Stephanie, interesting, right? The women are more meritorious than the men, right? What do you think of that, Susan? Why do you think you're more worthy than Howard? Stephanie, why are you more worthy than Jay? Why? Like, you're assured of a portion of the world to come. Jay, not so much. Like, well, why would that be? So think about it. The women don't wear a yarmulke because they don't need that reminder that the men need. Right? The women don't need a bris because they don't need to be perfected. They're already born perfect. Did you know that? The women are born perfect. The men are born imperfect. Their whole lives they're trying to be perfected. The woman, how long are you married? How long is your wife trying to fix you? Good morning, Hannah. Hannah and Andy from Louisville. Nice to see you. Okay. So here's what the Talmud says. Said Rav Tachia, from what do women merit this greater assurance of the world to come more than men? For bringing their sons to the synagogue to read Torah and for encouraging their husbands to go to study in yeshiva, to study Mishnah and Gemara, and for waiting for their husbands to whom they gave permission to study to study Torah in a yeshiva out of town for an extended period until they return home from the yeshiva. So in other words, by sending out their husbands to study Torah and waiting up for them, because when the husband comes home and the wife is sleeping, it's like a downer, But if your wife is waiting for you, you feel like, wow, that's amazing. She's waiting for me. It's so nice. You feel special. and you feel like she admires and appreciates what you just did, right? That is the merit of women. More than men. It's interesting that it's more than the men, right? Stephanie, this surprises me because of what Eve did. Eve was a great, great woman, let me tell you. Eve was an unbelievable woman. She was greater than Adam. Very Kabbalistic concept there, Stephanie. Eve was no silly woman. She was no fool. She was conscious of the purpose for which she was created, and she understood. I recently taught this idea in 2 recent courses. One was Secrets of the Bible, and also was this other course I'm teaching now called This Can Happen. It's about the course about Mashiach. And in both instances, Eve was the one that understood that the purpose of creation was not the world that God created, which was still a elevated world. The world needed to sin in order to be the lowest world, so that it could fulfill the purpose of creation, which was creating a home for God in the lowest realm. She realized that if there was an opportunity to sin, then it wasn't yet the lowest world, right? It's a lot to talk about over there, but if you want to hear that class, it's in Secrets of the Bible. It should be on our YouTube page, and if not, you can get it from the office here. Okay, so back to the Talmud here. Interesting, right? Let's talk about the woman for a moment before we go to the world to come. So how can women who just help their husbands and sons study Torah be more guaranteed of a share in the world to come than men who actually study Torah? It's like the supporting role is more important than the lead role. The answer is, when you go home today and Judy asks you, what did you study? You have good things to tell her here. The rabbi said, what? Right? Tell her that by her being home and you being here, she gets more merit than you. It's amazing, right? How does that even make sense? Right? It's a lot to discuss here, right? So the answer is that to study Torah lishma, to study Torah for its own sake, for the right reasons, is not easy, especially on a continuous basis. It's almost impossible for a man who studies not to at least occasionally have an improper motive. Why would you want to study Torah? Maybe I want to get out of the house. Maybe I'm trying to shirk my responsibilities at home. Maybe I just want to see the guys. Maybe it's just interesting and I want to study Torah because it's interesting, not because it's God's Torah. We learned yesterday in Tanya. Yesterday we learned in Tanya that studying Torah is your ticket to infinity. And that's the reason why you're supposed to study Torah, to be able to connect with God Almighty. That's the reason. But how often do you actually study Torah for that reason? How often you say, well, if it's interesting to me, I'll go. If it's not interesting to me, I won't go. Right? That shows you have an ulterior motive. So it's not easy to study Torah for the right reasons. His mother or wife, however, who sent him to study Torah, she certainly had a completely pure motive. And therefore, she will always receive reward for the Torah study that was studied for the right reasons. Interesting, right? Furthermore, that commentary comes from the Chassam Sofer. Furthermore, if the woman's son or husband wastes time while in yeshiva, he will surely be punished for this. Whereas she will be rewarded for the hours he studied and will not be punished for the hours he wasted, since her intention to send into yeshiva was not to waste time. Right? So if you being a shmendrik and wasting your time, is talking to the guys outside instead of studying Torah on the inside, that's your problem. But her intent in saying, Marty, go study. I'll wait for you. Breakfast will be ready by the time you come home, right? By her saying that, she has the most pure and perfect and sincere and authentic motive, right? She's saying, go connect with your spirituality, and let's talk about it when you come home, right? So the woman has the most perfect motive, whereas the husband, not so much. Others explain that in asking Nashim b'may zachyan, when asking women what is their merit, the Gemara is not asking why women are assured more than men in heaven. Rather, the Talmud's question is why they merit heaven altogether. This is from the Marsha. The commentary here is explaining the question. It's redefining the question. The question is in the Talmud, because remember the Talmud doesn't have any punctuation. There's no vowels or punctuation, so you can always, carefully restructure the punctuation. You can reset the question. It's easy. A lot to fight about, right? So when the Talmud says Nashim b'may zachyan, it literally translates as women. In what do they merit? So what's the question? What do they merit more than men? Or what do they merit altogether? Right? So therefore, rather, the Gemara's question is why they will have heaven altogether. In other words, why do they merit going to heaven for Torah study if they're not even commanded in Torah study? But certainly not as much as men. Right? For as mentioned in the previous insight, most commentators understand, and by the way, women are obligated in Torah study. I'm sorry if I said that they weren't. But if they're not studying as much as the men, then why are they getting a place in heaven, right? So what they're saying is that by having the supporting role, by encouraging and motivating their men, their sons and husbands, they can walk out. It's interesting because King David, by the way, and Abraham as well, when they fought their wars, they would always make sure that the people that stayed home to watch the camp, to stay guard, would share in the bounty as equally with the warriors out in the field. Yeah, because you had it all. In the 6-day war, which we're celebrating today, right? Israel had 200 jets compared to, I think it was 9,000 aircraft that were in the combined Arab nations. 200 against 9,000, right? So what Israel did on May, was it? I think the war started maybe on June 2nd. I think that's when the war started, June 2nd. So
first hour.
In the first hour, 7:45 a.m., they sent in about 190 jets, 188 jets, and they left 12 to roam Israel's skies to protect. That's it. Only 12 jets are protecting Israel's skies, right? 188 weren't, but those 12 that stayed behind were as important as the 188 that went out, right? So, for as mentioned in the previous insight, most commentaries understand the term heaven, olam haba, to refer to the world after the resurrection takes place. The Gemara meant to ask as follows. It goes without saying, when righteous women die, their souls go to the world of souls, to heaven, the same as the righteous men. But there's a difficulty regarding the resurrection of the dead, which will occur to people's bodies. And we're going to talk about this in a moment. Because it says elsewhere in the Talmud that the bodies of the righteous, see, for our souls to go to the world of souls, which is heaven, Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, we can understand that the souls of men and women will go up to heaven, right? To the spiritual world of heaven, where our souls bask in the divine radiance and the divine pleasure. That's good, right? We all merit that. But why do our souls get resurrected after that, in the world of resurrection? Why do our souls get resurrected? That's in the merit of the light of Torah. It's interesting. Torah is the dew, D-E-W, the dew of resurrection. In Mount Sinai, when God spoke twice, the first two commandments, each time that God spoke, they just all died. And he resurrected them through the dew of Torah. Tanya chapter 36, I think it is, says that Torah gives us strength. Torah is strength. Torah is called strength, right? When we study Torah, we actually make ourselves invincible to our problems. When you study Torah, you become fireproof to your problems, right? And that's why even death cannot overpower Torah. Because remember, Torah and God is one, right? So when we study Torah, we become one with God. We become invincible to our problems. Our problems are like water off a duck's back when you have the power, when you've internalized Torah, right? So when you've studied Torah, the body also will come back to life because you've made Torah, you've digested the Torah. So the question here is, if women didn't actually study the Torah, if they were only sending their husbands, then why are they being resurrected? That would be the question. Hence, says the Gemara too here, that people who do not study Torah during their lifetimes, even they performed many mitzvahs. Sorry, the Gemara says there, people who did many mitzvahs, even though they didn't study Torah. Sorry, start again. That people that didn't study Torah, even though they did a lot of mitzvahs, if they did and study Torah, will not be resurrected. Unless they had at least some connection to Torah study, such as enabling poor Torah students to study through financially supporting them. By you donating to Chabad, for example, and enabling Torah study to take place, what you're doing is that you're receiving a share in Torah study, which means it's a kindness that we're doing by allowing people to donate to a Torah institution. Because by an illiterate Jew donating to a Torah institution, they receive the merit of Torah and will ultimately be resurrected because of that. Right? You see an interesting point there, right? Rav therefore inquires on what merit righteous married women who do not study Torah themselves and typically do not have the money to financially support those who do, why will they be resurrected? To which the Talmud answers that they'll be resurrected in the merit they're encouraging their sons and husbands to study Torah. Right? It's an interesting discussion, this, right? But it touches on a lot of interesting ideas. So resurrection, first of all, happens for our bodies, not just our souls. Our souls go after we die. Let's just try to put things in context here, right? So when we die, what happens? When we're born, what happens is that our bodies get married into our souls. Souls get invested into our bodies, right? And that is not the beginning of life. That is the beginning of life on this world. But our souls lived forever before they were born into this body, right? At death, all that happens is the soul and the body separate. That's not the end of life. That's the end of life on this earth. But the soul goes up to heaven where it continues to live its eternal life, right? The body gets deposited behind. Now, where does it go, the soul, when it dies? When the body dies, where does the soul go? It goes up to heaven, to the world of souls, to Gan Eden. And we've spoken about this many times before going to Gan Eden. Sometimes it might need to go to purgatory, which is a cleansing process. The lowest part of the soul will stay by the grave. The higher four parts of the soul will go up to heaven, right? They might need to take a detour through purgatory to get to Gan Eden, to be cleansed before they go to Gan Eden. There is also the option of getting reincarnated into another body because you've got unfinished business upon this earth. You might need to come back, your soul, into another body, a grandchild maybe or something, to finish your mission upon this earth, right? But assuming that you eventually make it into heaven, there you're rising higher and higher, and it's the most exciting existence. Even though there's no eating and drinking, no procreating, and no competition, no, we just spoke about, no financial troubles. Nevertheless, it is the most exciting existence possible. Life isn't exciting because of the headaches that we have on this earth. Think about it. Would your life be exciting if you didn't have to having financial anxieties and marital problems and political stresses? Of course, life would be exciting, because you could just love the people that you love and enjoy them, and travel and wisdom and music and whatever, right? And you can actually enjoy life without headaches. That'll be amazing. You don't have to be sick in order to be busy, right? You can actually enjoy life when you're healthy, right? So that's what heaven is. It's a beautiful existence without our headaches, right? So after the world of heaven, of Gan Eden, when Mashiach comes, that's when all the souls are cleared out of heaven and they descend to this world to be resurrected, to be reunited inside of the bodies that they inhabited upon this earth.
But the bodies go to dust.
The bodies go to dust, correct. So how do they get resurrected? Because this is a question one of the Roman emperors asked Rabbi Yeshua, and he said to him that there's an essence in the human body that never gets destroyed. 2,000 years ago, that sounded like a Baba Maisa. But today, when we know about Watson and Crick, we know about DNA, of course. We know that there's, of course, think Jurassic Park, the petrified mosquito on the rock, right? The movie. Right? Good movie. So when you think about it, there's DNA, and DNA, energy never gets destroyed, right? The third law of thermodynamics, right? Energy is never destroyed. Exactly. So we know that there's such a thing as DNA, and DNA holds the code of the entire human genome. So there you go. I mean, it's not very complicated for us to know that there is something there from which you can technically clone the rest of the body. Okay, so cremation is a serious problem. Serious problem, and becomes right. So cremation becomes a serious problem because the person that's cremated may or may not have anything left. I don't know. I'm not a biologist, but I don't know. There is talk about cremation not enabling the resurrection of the dead. It's a tough call. Anyways, to try to convince people of that, but hopefully they understand, and hopefully they're sensitized to that before it's too late. Obviously, if you cremated not by your own choice, but by a Nazi or something, God forbid, then of course you get resurrected. The problem is when somebody gets cremated by their own choice, that's a terrible thing. So here what we're talking about, when we speak about Olam Haba, we're talking about the world to come, is this world where our souls are resurrected in our bodies, when the body comes back to life. And that is the world that we're going to talk about right now. Ready? So let's go a little bit deeper. So we spoke about the woman. Women is very, very important to support your husbands in the study of Torah. Why are women not studying Torah, by the way? Because they got to raise the children. They got to raise the family. They got to raise the next generation. In other words, is that a downgrade for women or an upgrade for women? Think about that. What do you think?
Obviously, it's a major necessity because the husband.
Yeah, but it's like means women are less important or more important than men? Think about it.
More important, next generation.
So I heard from actually one of our members who's a very successful businessman. We're smoking a cigar. He's smoking a cigar, and he tells me, he's like, Rabbi, I've never in my life met a person who on his deathbed said he wishes he spent more time in the office. He says to me, there's no greater achievement than your own children. And who is it that gets to spend more time with the children, the husband or the wife? The wife. That's not a downgrade, he says to me. Spending time with the ultimate goal of it all, right, is not a downgrade. That is an upgrade. That's because women are more important. And this is not patronizing. This is the ultimate purpose of it all. You can literally spend an entire life working and miss out on life itself. You can be so busy making a living that you don't have time to live. And it's the women that are charged with that incredibly beautiful opportunity of being there to live without having the opportunity of missing out. It's a challenge for them. It's a very, very big challenge for them. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they manage. Right, but in any event, the reason why the women aren't studying Torah is because they're typically home raising the next generation, which is the most important ultimate purpose of it all. And it's the husbands that they're sending out, or the sons that they're sending out of the house, but they are sharing in their merit, as we just discussed. Let's talk a little bit more about the world to come. Okay, so it sounds like this. Our explanation of the term the world to come is meaning the world that the soul goes to after a person dies. There's two kinds of world to come. There's the spiritual world to come, which happens after death, where the soul, separate from the body, goes up to heaven, spiritual world of souls. And then there's the world of resurrection, which is a physical world of resurrection, right? So let's take a look. So right now, it seems to be that the world to come is referring to the world of souls, according to the view of Rambam Maimonides. Although the world of souls exists right now, since it is the world that all souls of the people who died since the beginning of the world are currently in. That's where they are right now. When they die, they go to the world of souls. It's an existing reality. It is nevertheless called Olam Haba, the world to come, because for anybody alive now in this world, that is the next stage. The next stage. It's the world to come from this world. The world that follows this world. Like we Jews, we don't talk about death. We talk about passing away, passing on to where? Onto the next world, which is the world to come. Most other commentaries, however, dispute Maimonides' position. Maimonides holds that the next world, that the ultimate world is the world of souls, the world of spiritual reality. Most of the commentaries dispute Maimonides' interpretation of the world of Olam Haba for a variety of reasons, one of them being this very teaching of Rav, who says that the world to come has no eating, no drinking, no procreating, no business, no jealousy, no hatred, and no competition. Right? If these commentators argue the term Olam Haba refers to the world of souls, then why would he need to say that there's no food or drink over there? Isn't that obvious? If you're talking about a spiritual reality, do I need to tell you that there's no Tropicana orange juice over there? Like, obviously, like we know that, right? There's no barbecues up in heaven. Why do you need the Talmud to reveal to us that there's no barbecues in heaven? Like, who in their right mind would have thought so, right? Souls without bodies obviously do not do these things. Rather, these commentaries insist the term Olam Haba, world to come, refers to a world that does not presently exist, but will come into existence only in the future. This is the world after the resurrection. This is the world after the world, right, after the Mashiach comes, the world of resurrection of the dead. Rav's point was that even though people after resurrection of the dead will possess bodies, those bodies will be more sublime and will not need or have inclination to engage in any of the activities that people do in the present world. So it will be a physical world, but we won't need to eat or drink or procreate. Interesting, right? According to this understanding of the term Olam Haba, Rav's intent in often repeating this thought was to remind the students to constantly remember that the joy in Olam Haba will be basking in the light of the Shekhinah, while the pleasures of the current world will have no meaning over there. Right, what is the advantage of being resurrected? I mean, why do you need a body if you're not going to use it? Let me put it to you this way. Remember, the purpose of creation, we learned in Tanya, we mentioned that earlier, is to make for God a home in this lowest world. If the ultimate purpose of it all was to bask in the divine radiance in the spiritual reality, that's not the lowest world. You've not made for God a home in the lowest world. Or, getting back to Stephanie's comment about Eve. Right? Good morning, David Rosen from Lakewood. Nice to see you. Nice chatting with you yesterday. So the purpose of it all is to make for God a home in this physical world, where we can engage with God like in the Garden of Eden, right? And like it was at the beginning, but that was still too elevated, right? What we've done in the past 5,781 years is developed a relationship with God's essence, Not just with regards to what God has done for us, but with regards to God in and of himself. We relate to God no longer only as the fact that he created us. We relate to God, we've learned so much about God himself that we're making a home for God himself upon this lowest world. And that would be the purpose of ultimately resurrecting our bodies, to be able to engage with divinity, with godliness in a world that's physical. Okay? Rabbi Yosef Yehuda le Bloch of Telz brings out this point of the parable. A man was preparing to travel from Eastern Europe to America. The trip by boat would take many months. Since the trip could not be made in one stretch, there was a scheduled 2-week stopover in France, so the boat would take on additional provisions for the final leg of the journey. The traveler knew that in order to manage in America, he would need to know English, but he also knew that for the 2 weeks he would be staying in France, it would help him to know French. And since he would be stopping in France first, he decided to first learn French. Time passed and he managed to learn French before setting sail, but he did not have time to learn English. The boat docked in France and he disembarked, and being fluent in French, he enjoyed every minute of his stay. At the end of 2 weeks, he returned to the boat and continued on to America. He reached America and attempted there as well to speak French, but no one understood him, nor could he understand them. People said to him, "Fool, you knew that you'd be staying in America for only 2 weeks, and the rest of your life you'd be spending in America, in France for 2 weeks, and then the rest of your life you'd be spending in America. So so you went and learned French, which you would need for a limited time, instead of learning English, which you would need for the rest of your life." This was the point that Rav was trying to convey to his students in his oft-repeated lesson. Mortal man, you come to this world for 70 years, maybe 80 years, maybe a little longer. But mainly you'll be in the eternal world to come. That's your final destination. And there they do not speak the language of eating and drinking, jealousy, hatred, and competition. What, however, do people do? We spend all of our lives learning French, right? Learning 2 weeks. They learn the language of this world and they forget that in the eternal world, that language has no place, because in that world, there is no eating, drinking, or jealousy. What is the language there? What is the occupation that tzaddikim, the righteous, sit with their crowns on their heads and delight in the radiance of the Shekhinah? In the next world, we will forever be consumed by regret. Why we will lament when we were in the previous world that we foolishly neglect to learn Torah, to learn how to delight in the radiance of the Shekhinah, which is the only thing that matters in the world of eternity, while we were wasting our time learning French when we should have been learning English. Right? So to summarize, and I welcome any of your questions here. What was that, Marty? Good analogy, right? So just to wrap it up here, and of course, I welcome any of your questions if there are any. I see Winston's busy on YouTube. Let's see. I'm going to get to your questions in a moment. So just to wrap it up. So we live our lives in this world, souls inside of bodies. And in this world, this is where it's spiritually dark, and your accomplishments and achievements in this world is the ultimate purpose of existence. In this world, we're able to fulfill the purpose of creation, which is to make for God a home in this world. Every mitzvah that you do, every moment you spend in Torah study, you are literally building God's palace in this earth with that physical object or that physical space of time or space. This is the ultimate purpose of it all. When we finish our mission in this world, we go to a waiting room. It's called heaven. Body stays on earth, the soul goes up to heaven, and it's a waiting room. It's a nice place, but it's like, it's waiting. What's it waiting for? It's waiting for the ultimate purpose, which is the fruits of our labor fulfilled.
So that's not Gan Eden.
No, Gan Eden is the Garden of Eden. It's a spiritual place. But after Mashiach comes, which means after the accumulated efforts of all the Jewish people in the history of the world has come to fruition, which means that we've managed to bring divine consciousness to this world. Now we all get released from the Garden of Eden, which is a really comfortable waiting room. And we come out and we come back to this world, we're resurrected together with our bodies. And here we bask in the divine radiance. We grow in infinity. We grow with infinity in this world without focusing on food or drink. I just want to put it into the proper context by saying this, that if you enjoy a pizza, you enjoy pizza? Who doesn't enjoy a pizza, right? How much pleasure does a pizza give you? On a scale of 1 to 100. 10, 15. What's greater pleasure? Music gives you greater pleasure? Good music? Maybe a 30. How about love? Does love give you greater pleasure? Love. Much more. Maybe an 80, right? But all of this is limited human relationships. I want you to put into context what it would be like to engage with infinity. It is infinitely more pleasurable. If you're having a good time in this earth with all of its headaches and problems, sorrows, then your pleasure in the world to come is going to make the pleasures of this world look like silly. It's like when you're making millions of dollars. And you remember how when you were 4 years old, you loved playing with toy cars. You're like, look, I can see why a 4-year-old can appreciate, can enjoy that. But I don't want to play with toy cars. It's not anything I'm going to enjoy right now. Because I've been exposed to, my mind has been opened up to far greater horizons. I'm making $50 million. I don't need to spend time with 50-cent cars, right? See what I'm saying? We'll look at our lives in this world and say, food and drink, I can understand why it was good for low-level, low-conscious human beings. But now that we're being exposed to infinity, to higher consciousness, why would I want to waste time with that, right? Let's take a look at the comments. Winston. Elaine, what happens to free choice with regards to Olam Haba? Don't worry about it. You have plenty free choice. Good morning, Elaine. You have plenty free choice in Olam Haba. Okay, in the world to come, because you'll be able to choose if you want to stay narrow-minded or open-minded, broad-minded to infinity. It's not going to be easy to open your mind to infinity, right? Think about that. You'll be able to choose if you want to go learn with Maimonides, with Nachmanides, with Rashi, with Abraham, King David. You can go learn with the Rebbe. You know, it's going to be very, very interesting where you pick your. It's going to be idyllic. It's going to be gorgeous, right? But you'll still have your freedom of choice. Instead of freedom of choice between bad and good, instead of choosing between poison and vitamin, you'll choose between good and better, right? Again, you don't have to be risking fatality in order for life to be interesting. You see what I'm saying, right? Winston, women, do the resurrection change the physical body to the spiritual body? No, the physical body does not become spiritual. Spiritual, which can go through the wall? No, it does not become spiritual. It is a physical world. Winston, spiritual, perfect like Adam and Eve when they was in the Garden of Eden at the first time. Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, Winston, were physical beings. Woman like gardener and man is Adam, Adamah, soul. The woman is like a gardener and man is Adam, soil. Right. I'm not sure why I say woman is the gardener, Winston, but I do agree that Adam is soil. The word Adam means soil, earth. And therefore, we are certainly physical, like the soil of the earth. Man was made from the soil of the earth, and that is the purpose of why we were created, to be able to infuse godliness, holiness, essence into the physicality of this earth, which is why we are the fulcrum of creation, because only man who's made out of earth, human being who's made out of earth, and together with that, Adam also means Adam el Elyon, I resemble my maker. The same Adam means earth, Adam means I resemble my maker. We literally are highest of the high and lowest of the low in one free choice entity. And we are the ones that are the fulcrum of existence, that are able to bring the highest of the high down to the lowest of the low. And that concludes today's Talmud study, friends. Thank you for joining me this morning. It's all happening very, very soon with the coming of Mashiach, happening today, God willing. Brace yourself. I'll see you in Jerusalem. Let's make a time. Just watch the WhatsApp group so we can make a time to meet Chabad Palm Beach Gardens in the Holy Temple. We'll fly together on the wings of eagles. All right, guys. Shalom. Have a wonderful day. And thank you very much for joining me here this morning. Shalom.
So in the Torah, there's two